All right, Matthias, this is your show.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to Recorder on the Wall, where we have something a little extra special planned for today. Many of you will no doubt be fans of more than just Redwall as a series, but as a piece of the fantasy genre. And what's more fantasy these days than the tabletop role-playing games that have become popular over the past several decades, whether it's D&D, Pathfinder, or any other system you can think of? It's basically the biggest thing ever. And how do you spice up Redwall when there is no more official content being generated book-wise? Why, you have a tabletop RPG that inspired or is inspired by just everything that made Redwall great. And in this case, we are talking about a new upcoming TTRPG called Woodlander. Joining us today, we have the creator of the system here to talk about the system he's created, what makes it special. So we're here to discuss everything about this game, what makes it special, and get the creator's take on what it is and why we should all really, really care about it. So I'm Matthias720, and with me today is Pete.
Oh. Maybe you should just introduce us. Hi, folks. I'm Papa Ebbet Pete. Here.
We got Braden.
Yeah, I'm Braden.
We got Katie.
I don't know how Discord works.
Professional podcasting at its finest.
We're on Discord now, and we have the creator of Woodlander here, Alexander Johnson.
Hello.
Sorry for the blundering along here, folks. Those of you who exist outside the Redwall space, but in this space we call computers, we have been recording this podcast through Skype since we started. And Microsoft announced about a month ago they are sunsetting the program for good. So we are blundering along trying to get Discord as our main recording interface.
This is our first time.
Inevitable new Teams.
Oh, I don't want to deal with Teams.
No.
So this is our first time recording with Discord. So if we have any technical issues, we apologize in advance. So, Mr. Alexander Johnson, how should we address you informally?
You could just call me Alex.
Okay, Alex. For our listeners who have no idea what Woodlander is, can you give us the elevator pitch on what it is and where it came from?
Woodlander is obviously heavily inspired by and intended for stories like Redwall, as well as other series or pieces of media like Disney's Robin Hood, Mouse Guard, and the Mistmantle Chronicles. It's a very niche but very well-defined subgenre of fantasy. So several years ago, I was looking for a system that I could use to sort of set adventures in a Redwall-like universe. And the games I was familiar with didn't really fit the tropes and conventions of that genre. And those few systems that I was familiar with that were animal themed didn't really lean as much into the animal side of things for that, that the whole point of that genre of fantasy is the animals. So I wanted something a little bit more robust in that regard. So Woodlander is meant to be both a fulfillment of that desire as well as a desire to accommodate other ideas that have either like sort of fallen out of favor or haven't really been in favor with other systems. So not only do you get a greater emphasis on the animal facet of the genre, you also have the focus on exploration and wilderness and experiencing the world from an animal's point of view, since as animals they exist in a generally a less industrialized, less modern setting that you would see in something like The Lord of the Rings or D&D. As animals, they live in dens and burrows just as often as they do in cottages and castles.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely picked up on that from the animal point of view when you in your Kickstarter art here that depicts a mouse hero taking on a snake.
Yes, very classic scenario for these sorts of stories.
Sounds familiar, but I can't place it. Something about.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but it sounds like the sort of story that inspired my username. But I mean, maybe that's just me speculating.
But no, I really like what you definitely set up here. I mean, yes, you do say you're inspired by Redwall, Miss Minnow Chronicles, Disney's Robin Hood, and to your point, I definitely have played akin RPG games before. We talked a little bit about this off air, but Mouse Guard and Mice and Mystics, which my colleagues and my friends and I still can't beat the first scenario. So good times.
Mm-hmm. So
I was curious if I can ask. You mentioned here on the page meaningful choices and narrative results. So it actually my first thought ran to like the Fate system. I don't know if you've used that before.
I haven't used it, but I researched it when, amongst other games, when I was looking for different rules and mechanics that I thought would serve the genre I had in mind, the setting, the setting I had in mind for the game. What was your concern or question about that focus?
Well, I mean, I was guessing based on dice rolls that would.
Yes.
I'm curious how the dice roll system works in your system. Let's start there, because for those of you who don't know, in the Fate system, you basically can either have positive, neutral, or negative, and that can be double positive, double negative as well.
Mm-hmm. In that respect, it's not quite as much as Fate, but like Fate and other sort of narratively focused games, the results you get, it's more than just a binary yes/no answer. There are degrees of success.
Mm-hmm.
So a typical skill check, something that you'd be rolling the dice to determine the outcome of, is conducted as competing dice rolls between the player and his opponent. Whoever that may be, whether it's a locked door or a wall you're trying to climb or an enemy you're fighting, and so they'd each side would roll a certain number of dice, dictated by their respective level of skill, either the character's competence or the amount of skill or rather the complexity of the task at hand. So like picking a simple padlock might be a level 2 skill, whereas trying to crack a safe would be like a level 3 or level 4 skill check. And then each side is attempting to roll in respect to a shared difficulty rating. So the player is attempting to roll above that number, and the opponent is attempting to roll equal to or under. And every die that they roll that meets that criteria counts as a success or a hit, as I refer to them in the rules. And whichever side has the most hits is successful. And depending on how many hits each side got, determines your level of success. So if one side rolled no hits and the other side rolled at least one hit, that side not only succeeded, but succeeded unanimously. So it's a great result. And if each side got the same amount of hits, then it'd be mediocre results, like a yes but sort of scenario. Like, yes, you succeeded, but at a cost or some other inconvenience. So players are incentivized to not only play to their character's strengths, but also manipulate the situation in their favor to shift that shared difficulty rating up or down, respectively. I guess in the player's case, it would be down.
Mm-hmm.
But that difficulty rating is dependent on external factors like the weather, the terrain, what tools the player might be using. So, like, going back to the lock picking example, if you're trying to pick a padlock with a normal lock pick, the difficulty rating would be normal, and so it'd be more or less a 50-50 chance of getting a successful die, a hit. And if you're using something like improvised, like a nail or like a thin bladed knife to try to pick it, you'd be at a disadvantage. So the difficulty rating would be increased. But if you had like a full set of burglary tools, it'd be much easier. So planning ahead is just as important as playing to your character's strengths.
Okay. And one of the things that you also list on the Kickstarter page is a tension mechanic. Can you explain how that works in relation to the rest of the system and how it relates to these skill checks?
Yeah, that is the primary engine by which things like random encounters are dictated. So it's an in-game timer of sorts. Think of it like a progress bar. After you've accumulated a certain amount of tension, an event occurs as some sort of setback, whether it's like fatigue to simulate exhaustion or starvation, or like lantern fuel depleting or running out of ammo, or like I said, random encounters with potential enemies as you're exploring or traveling. And so the tension's always going up, and it carries over from scene to scene. So like every time you rest, you get a certain amount of tension. Every time you traverse the wilderness or explore a dungeon-like area, or every time you're get into a fight, anything that would draw attention to you or put yourself and your belongings at risk is the chance of accruing tension. One consequence for achieving a low level of success, if you fail a skill check, you can sort of fail forward, and one of the costs is tension. So like if the game master decides hard failure in this case isn't interesting, and like if the player would just have the opportunity to just keep trying over and over again and eventually get it without any other sort of meaningful consequence to failure, then the cost could be tension. Like you accomplish what you're doing, but in an inefficient manner. So you've done it in it like you've like let's say you're breaking down a door or something, like you break it down, but you accrue some tension in the process. You've drawn attention to yourself by it. You've made a lot more noise than you were expecting to, or you put some strain on your weapon or body trying to break it down. And so if that action accrued enough tension to sort of fill up that progress bar, and the timer counted down, and an event happened, it could trigger like your weapon's broken, or you're exhausted, or more commonly, you've drawn the attention of some sort of some nearby creature or person and triggered a random encounter. So it's meant to help facilitate bookkeeping to some degree, to alleviate bookkeeping, and avoid arbitrary narrative decisions on the part of the game master. Like, yeah, I think it's like instead of tracking, like, okay, every day, every 24 hours, did they eat a meal? Yes or no? Okay, you're exhausted. Or like, okay, I think they've dilly-dallied long enough. Time to trigger a random encounter. So in that way, it's partially meant to avoid arbitrary decisions.
So it's mainly a way to not only drive the plot forward, but also to keep the game master from enforcing their will over the session by saying, okay, yeah, I'm the one that's saying here's what's happening, but I'm also I don't have control over this clock. This is the player's doing.
It's partially the player's doing, but it's meant to sort of indicate to both the game master and the players when something should happen, or when something could happen, rather than keeping meticulous notes and timelines, and everyone, individually keeping track of things like how long has my lantern been lit, or how long has it been since we've eaten a meal. Because the system itself is focused a lot more on exploration and travel, so your characters could be going quite a while without resting or eating, or replenishing their supplies, and it's meant to help keep track of that in a less tedious way.
So it provides a structure to what would otherwise be a nonlinear narrative.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
So the other thing that I really appreciated looking at the Kickstarter page was the inclusion of rest and relaxation as a mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I love this artwork of this adorable little mouse cooking over this tiny little pot on a fire just out in the middle of the woods. And it's like, that just screams Redwall to me. That makes me so happy. Can you explain the significance of having rest and relaxation as a necessary component of the system?
Yeah, that was, like I said, that was one of the things that I felt modern systems, at least the ones that I was familiar with at the time, they didn't really account for, because rest and like food and singing and like downtime activities are a big part of Redwall specifically, like Redwall especially, but also other settings emphasize it to some degree too. And things like resting, keeping track of rations, and downtime stuff is usually glossed over quite a bit in games like D&D. It used to be more centralized in older editions until players tended to favor more more action set pieces and linear storytelling rather than more of a simulationist, like open sandbox kind of adventure. And granted, I found that out later during my research, but I was familiar with 5e at the time, and that didn't really, at least to my knowledge at the time, didn't really do much to incentivize those sorts of activities. So in Woodlander, this sort of ties into the exhaustion mechanic to some degree, where your character has a certain amount of points that you can spend to boost your skill checks by adding extra dice for you to roll, since it's a d6 dice pool system. So you add more dice, so you have a greater chance of succeeding your roll, but you've only got so many points to spend before you have to do certain downtime activities to recharge. So you've got mind, body, and spirit points that you can spend on related activities. So like body points you can spend on physical activities, like if you're in combat or doing like athletic or acrobatic stunts. Mind points are for like intellectual pursuits, like conducting research or maybe like singing songs or telling stories, that sort of thing, or deciphering languages. And spirit points are more for the more mystical side of things, like divination, fortune telling. So as your character exerts himself, spending these points, because you've only got so many skills that can augment your skill checks, and you might come up against tasks or opponents that you're underqualified for. So as the more points you spend to boost your rolls, eventually you're going to need to get those points back. And so specifically, eating food gets body points back because it nourishes you, nourishes the body. Entertainment, like listening to songs or playing music or reading or playing games, will improve your replenish your mind points, because it's calming, it's relaxing. You're not as high strung or anxious anymore. And spirit points are recovered by meditating, so taking some time to recenter yourself, reflect on what you've done, like what's happened to you, like what your character has experienced so far, and sort of spiritually grounding himself once again. So you gotta take time out of the adventure to do those things. So having access to food and other forms of entertainment and other opportunities to rest and relax are important. Whether that's at a town or settlement that your characters come across, or just at a campsite in the wilderness, is that's circumstantial. But at some point, if you want to be at your peak performance, you're going to have to take some time out to do those sorts of things. And it also offers opportunities for role playing and getting into character for your own character, and interacting with NPCs in the world, perhaps, but also your friends' characters, the people you're playing with.
Okay. Very much in the spirit of, hey, it's Redwall Abbey. We're all gonna just get together and live in this giant big stone building, and what goes into making that all work?
Yeah.
Beasts.
So are the main enemies that you'd be fighting, is that going to be mostly bigger creatures, or could it be other factions of Mycen related character species?
That's up for the players and the game master to determine for whatever adventure they want to do and whatever setting they have in mind. It's Woodlander sort of it's setting agnostic, although it's genre specific. So like Redwall is obviously the primary source of inspiration, but it's not the only one. So I've kept other franchises in mind that players might want to use. So you could use which species of animal are present in the world and limit your choices to those. You could decide which ones are inherently bad or evil or good or none of the above, depending on what the setting is. So in Redwall, there's a very distinct distinction between the vermin as the bad guys and the woodlanders as the good guys. But in a series like the Mistmantle Chronicles, there isn't really a black and white morality like undertone or overtone to the setting in terms of specific creatures, and its selection of creatures are also much narrower. Also, it's only got about like maybe half a dozen compared to Redwall's like 24 or so. So the players it's intended for the players to make up their own world build and come up with their own stories and settings and characters. Woodlander is just meant to be a set of rules that you can use to accommodate the genre in mind. There is an official setting, but it's deliberately left fairly vague, fairly bare bones for that reason, so the players can expand upon the world. In Woodlander, it's got more of a prey versus predator sort of dynamic. The smaller, weaker creatures are usually, or not usually, but like they can be picked on or looked down upon by the bigger, stronger creatures, whether they're carnivores or not. So in that respect, it's a lot more similar to a story like Zootopia. It's more of a precarious piece between these different factions, these different demographics, and what they require to live comfortably. So they're all trying to work together and trying not to step on each other's toes. But inevitably, there's people who don't really follow the rules. There's some bad apples that need to be dealt with. Obviously,
so you could just as easily have a story that's centralized around more like political intrigue as much as go out and do the equivalent of hunting a dragon.
Yeah, it's a very versatile system. It's it can accommodate sandbox play where you just sort of go about exploring the world and discovering what it has to offer. You can do a more linear story. You can have a campaign where, if you wanted to, where it's all taking place just within like a single city or settlement, and have some settlement management. Like if you wanted, say, have an entire adventure where you're managing a shop within a village, you could certainly do something like that. So it's whatever the players want to focus on, it should prove adequate for their desires.
What I'm hearing is, and forgive the Star Trek reference, but we're comparing and contrasting Next Generation to a Deep Space Nine.
I haven't watched those, so I can't really make that comparison.
I know Pete and
No, yeah,
Brandon will
no,
get.
I know what you mean. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Okay.
So it's not all
Um,
Ghost Mouse sends you on quest.
No, you could certainly use it as a storytelling tool, though.
Mm.
Fantastic.
That can be a
So
very convenient game master friendly method of delivering exposition.
I mean, we all here know that Brian Jakes really leaned into the hey, Martin the Warrior's here to tell you exactly where you need to go now.
But in very vague terms.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh God! Now
And
you're just making
occasion-
me think he's Obi-Wan.
He kind of is.
Yeah,
Luke,
and
go to the Dagobah system. Where's that? Who knows?
we can only speak in riddles from the afterlife.
It follows, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm. So I know you make all your own artwork. What is your primary inspiration? Like your style? What was the main factor that was like, yes, I want to draw like this?
Um, my style, like I can be uh, fairly versatile and flexible in what I draw, depending on what I'm trying to emulate. But overall, my style is very informed and influenced by uh, artists like Gary Chalk, who you might be familiar with. He did illustrations for several Redwall books. David Peterson, the artist and writer behind Mouse Guard, and also to some degree, Gendy Tartakovsky's works like Samurai Jack or the original 2D Clone Wars shorts before the CGI show was by the same name was started. So I'm sort of a mix between the high detail of like Gary Chalk's pieces and David Peterson's sort of very textured renderings, and the sort of like classic cartoon simple shapes style of like Gendy Tartakovsky's work and other sort of early 2000s cartoons that I grew up with. Like I've liked comics, right? And obviously grew up with cartoons, so those have been a big influence on how I draw, but I'm also a very detail-oriented artist. So I try to balance simplicity with detail a lot of the time. For Woodlander's work, I deliberately wanted to invoke the same sort of style you'd see in the pen and ink illustrations from the Redwall books and other books that I grew up with. Sort of bringing that old school feel. You see similar things in older D&D modules a lot of the times from the 70s and 80s. So something sort of comic booky to bring that sort of nostalgic old school feel to the book.
Oh,
So
I
it's
can tell. I mean, art looks phenomenal, honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at your art station, and yeah, I can see the broad range, but I'm picking up on the different influences that you're mentioning. But I'm also seeing some other things here, like there's one or two of them that are very reminiscent of the old animated film Secrets of Nim.
Yeah, I guess Don Bluth is another influence. I guess you could say some of the pieces on my art station are deliberately meant to invoke, like the projects that I was drawing stuff for were meant to invoke Don Bluth's work to some degree.
Mm.
Because I'm currently doing all of the artwork for an upcoming module for the Chronicles of Ares RPG, specifically a sequel to their Shadows of Padfoot Alley module, which focused on their rat folk characters, and the writer and designer of those materials, Greg Lambert, is very heavily inspired by The Secret of Nim, as well as Narnia to some degree. So yeah,
Okay.
I'm keeping those influences in mind specifically when creating artwork for that. But yeah, like, I'm always trying to improve, always experimenting a bit with how I draw things, depending on what I see other artists doing. I observe, I try to learn, try to maybe improve on how things are done. Just, art is a continuous process of learning and refinement.
I totally get that. Pete, would we be able to link to his ArtStation and the Kickstarter in the show notes?
Oh, absolutely. That shouldn't be terribly hard at all.
Okie dokie. I guess I am just about out of questions as far as like Woodlander specific stuff goes,
Mhm.
but I'm terribly curious. When we have people on, we like to ask them about their history with Redwall as a series and what their favorite novel is.
Before we get to that, I have one more Woodlander question for you. I know you've got quite the backing here on your Kickstarter, and that's awesome. When are you hoping to be able to start sending stuff out so our listeners can know?
There should be a projected. If you look at the rewards page, I think it says an estimated time of delivery. We're aiming for June because the book's all written up and everything. It's all ready for print. It's just we're waiting for the end of the funding period, and then we're going to send things in for printing and manufacturing, and we're estimating about a month for that, and then a month or so for delivery to be completed.
Okay.
If everything goes well.
Fair enough.
It could be sooner. It could be later, depending on certain factors.
When this episode inevitably comes out, it will likely be after the Kickstarter has completed. Do you have any plans to make the system available afterwards so that people can just pick it up? And if so, where?
Yeah. I was planning to offer the PDFs for the rulebook, the module, like the adventure module that I made as a stretch goal, and like the character sheets and stuff on Drive-Thru RPG. That's the only one I'm aware of at the moment. I might have to look around to see if there are other like dedicated tabletop role-playing store sites that I could list it on. That's the only one I'm aware of right now, though. So yeah,
I mean,
after everything's concluded, that's my plan. That was Plan B if the Kickstarter fell through, also. But I'm happy to see that it's doing very well.
Good. Okay, so Matthias, your Redwall questions.
So, how did you come to the series, and what is your favorite novel?
I was first introduced to the series by my mom back in like 2000 or 2001. It must have been 2001. And I don't really know why, but she brought it with us. While me and my family were on an extended like camping road trip sort of thing, where we were driving all around Lake Michigan. So that was about 2 weeks. Maybe it was 3 weeks. A couple weeks of driving and camping. She was reading us the book throughout the camping trip. We were around. Me and my twin brother were around like 7 or 8 at the time, and my younger brother was about 5 or 6. And I'm not sure where she got it. I'm not sure why she wanted to read it to us, but it immediately caught my imagination. And at the time, I wasn't really into reading. I wasn't really compelled to read much. I didn't find it interesting. But that series immediately grabbed my attention for whatever reason. And I started looking through my school's library for more books in the series and started reading those. And my local library in town, reading the books it had, more specifically renting the audiobooks, which I would listen to while I was drawing and doing other hands-on projects. So it's been close to 25 years, I guess, at this point that I've been a fan of the series throughout its, at least like the later half of its, or later third of its publication run. And so it's always been a sort of comfort series for me over the years. I go back to it every once in a while, especially in recent years while I was developing Woodlander. I've kind of had it on the audiobooks on constant repeat, just for, like refamiliarizing myself with the stories and characters while I was devising the rules and mechanics to accommodate those same stories and characters.
Aren't the audiobooks great? I find them very, very comforting.
They are honestly the best produced audiobooks I've ever come across. And like I listened to audiobooks all the time in like middle school and high school, rented from my library, the local library. Like I said, I listen to them while I work on art, and like they're the only ones that have like a full cast. They're as well as being narrated by the author.
Yeah.
They have musical accompaniment and like actual singing. So
They are wonderful.
you could tell they put a lot of effort and love into those books, and they're very entertaining, very, very cozy, like you said, for that reason.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so
as
good.
for my favorite book in the series, my personal favorite is Merton the Warrior. But I've got several others that are in close runners up.
Oh, you got a top 5 like me. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm fond of Rackety Tam.
Yes.
Matty Mayo is a favorite, as well as Mossflower, and
Yes.
obviously the OG Redwall, the titular Redwall, is always good to go back to. While I don't think they're quite as good in terms of like writing quality, I do really like stories like The Bellmaker and Pearls of Elutra for and even something like The Legend of Luke for exploring the world to a greater degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were only very few books in the series that I would say are actually just kind of okay. The rest are at least good, if not great. So it's hard to pick a true favorite. But like I said, my personal favorite is Martin the Warrior.
That is a good one.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice.
Gut punch at the end.
Yeah.
As we have oft said on this show, there is really no truly bad Redwall book, but there is one that we have eviscerated terribly. Would you care to give a guess as to which of the books we did not like as much?
I know a fan non-favorite is Outcast of Redwall.
You got it in one.
Yep, there you go.
I actually don't mind that story so much, but
I like parts of it.
that's
There were
just
just
me. Like
parts that were really badly done.
I think the main issue is that it's like two half books jammed together.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you're outlining what we said. So
Yeah. It's
But for that same reason, I also find it a little refreshing because it sort of breaks the formula a bit.
I can see that and respect it. I don't 100% agree with it, but I can understand and respect it.
It's not my favorite book. I'll say that, but I don't consider it terrible. It's just in the middle. It's just okay. I think it has some interesting ideas, but it maybe could have done more to explore some of those ideas.
I think the ideas are great. I just don't think it was executed very well, especially the Veil storyline. It's just come on, man.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
I don't really. The only issue I have with the Veil storyline is the ending conclusion that the characters come to, because it seems completely opposite of what the events of the story seemed to implicate. But
I could get on a whole soapbox about this.
We could spend a whole hour on this. Yes.
Yeah.
That's probably a better discussion for a different time.
Yep.
But I'm happy to discuss it, but I don't know. I don't think that's what we came here to do.
Nah.
I mean, if you want to come back, we eventually want to do like recaps of all the books in like single episodes. If you're interested in coming back for Outcast, we could see about having you back.
Or any of the
I'm
others.
happy to join for any of them, but
yeah,
it's me. It's just me.
I mean, we're just us too, so I mean,
Yeah.
My personal least favorite is Doomweight. That's just me. But
that was a weird one.
The one that I always forget about is Rogue Crew.
Yeah, that's also a weird one.
We literally just finished the series. Our was it like 7.5 years, Pete?
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
We started this podcast. I was on episode 0, and I did not think it would take us this long to get through the entire series. We just had episode 3 of Rogue Crew go up last month. Oh.
Well, if you want a different series to start into, I can recommend the Mistmantle Chronicles as a Redwall adjacent alternative. I just read I got the reprint of those last year, and I read through those, and they were good. They weren't. I don't know if they're as good, or at least they're different enough from Redwall to be. They have their own style. But there's a lot fewer. There's only 5 books in the series. I think they're aiming for a sequel series now, maybe. But last I heard, but I don't know what the progress on that is.
Margaret McAllister, right?
The last one.
I think that's the author's name. Yeah.
Okay.
I like the first book the best, and then it sort of. I guess going downhill is maybe too strong a word, but it sort of it starts off strong and then sort of plateaus a bit towards the end. But very similar setting, very similar ideas. So if you like Redwall, you'll probably like those two. It has its own sort of heavy topics that you might enjoy discussing.
So noted. Does anybody else have any questions for Alex?
I'm good.
I think we've covered, pretty much all of it.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about these things, but it's been really fun to listen.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, what are your guys' experiences with tabletop role playing games or just role playing games in general? And what are you most looking forward to in terms of like experiencing Woodlander? Based on your limited knowledge, what are you most looking
for?
for?
I gotta be a barbarian mole. Let's just that's gonna have to be a start here. So honestly, I mean, I've done a gamut of a few different tabletops out there. Certainly, classic D&D, Pathfinder, Fate, although it was the Dresden Files version of Fate. And a few scattered other ones we've done. Numenera was probably one of my favorites. Is still one of my favorites. So, but when it comes to conventional D&D, I usually prefer to be like tanks, but or like maybe a ranger. I am very bad at doing spellcasters because I have to always remember what I have access to, and yeah, I prefer the pointy end goes into the other guy kind of characters.
Yeah, that's certainly not. It's not an issue with Woodlander. Woodlander, it's a very low fantasy, low magic setting, so there isn't really spellcasters per se. The closest you'll get are, seers and fortune tellers who can, do some divination to, sort of find information, like discover information in unconventional ways, or provide buffs to your companions, or like monks or priests who can do more stuff with like ghosts and other spirits to some degree. But that's about the most fantastical you'll get. In terms of being a tank, you'll definitely want to be the stereotypical like blood frenzied badger kind of fighter character. Size is a very defining factor in Woodlander. So
that's my point. Everyone who wants the easy option would play a badger on full on blood breath. I'm playing a mole character.
You're playing a mole character
from Sable Queen.
Yeah.
Yes,
Axel Sternclaw. Yeah.
Definitely, you're definitely an option. Definitely something you can play into. Woodlander isn't really a class-based system. It's more skill-based. So you can do a lot to customize your character. Obviously, what species you are can inform what your character could be, like have a natural knack for doing, or like natural skills. So like birds are good messengers and scouts because they can fly. They can travel fast by like just flying over things, and they're good at navigating. Obviously, moles are good at digging and have a good sense of subterranean spaces. They're basically dwarves. Mice and other small critters are better at stealth because they can squeeze through tight gaps and hide behind things. And the big predator type characters like the badgers and the otters and cats and foxes are good fighters because they're just naturally big and strong. They got natural weapons, right? But in terms of actual, like, what your character does, like, there's no real limit on what you could do. You could be a farmer, you could be a warrior, you could be a scribe. So you're not limited in terms of your character's background in that regard. It's not as rigid as the classes in D&D are.
Cool.
Woodlander's a very versatile, very flexible game overall.
Sounds good.
Sounds
But,
cool.
Yeah.
being big also being big has its benefits, but also its shortcomings.
Yes.
You need more food. You need to stay alive. Obviously, you're going to be, all your weapons and armor and stuff are going to be bigger, so that they're going to cost more, right?
Maybe a bigger target.
Yeah.
It's like
More noticeable.
it's like driving a tank to go get groceries. It's going to be it needs going to some degree in certain contexts. So being small has its benefits, being big has its benefits, and vice versa.
My only experience with these type of games is the podcast The Adventure Zone. It's a kind of wildly inappropriate, hilarious type. It started with Dungeons and Dragons, but they've done a bunch of other games. I've just listened to that. So, I mean, if I ever play a game, I will have to have someone hold my hand like a 5-year-old for a while because I really don't know what I'm.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of experience either. Most I can say are, like video games where the stat blocks are the standard TTRPG, charisma, constitution, wisdom, all that jazz.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of games like the Elder Scrolls games are based in that kind of mathematical space in terms of game design, but then they kind of take the ball halfway to the goal. They take a right turn and then go off and do their own thing.
Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, just in general, where you're traipsing through fantasy world with fantasy stats, but you are not limited to just following the narrative. If you want to get a house and then literally fill it with as much cheese as you can, you can do that. Just cause. So, not to say that most tabletop RPGs can't do that sort of thing, but it's the experience of, yes, I'm going to go have an adventure and okay, time to roll initiative. Depending on the game, sometimes you don't do that.
Yeah.
The only other, like, quote unquote experience I have, and it's not really experience, it's I'm going to have experience, is I backed Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere RPG last year, so I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that here in about
fun.
4 to 6 months.
I haven't heard of that one. Well, Woodlander is it doesn't rely on the typical like D&D-esque 6 ability scores like charisma, strength, dexterity, whatever. Like I said, it's more skill based. So your character's background defines their skill level. So like if the knowledge and training that your character has acquired versus more sort of abstract stats. So you're either good at something or you're not good at something, but that's where the the mind, body, spirit points I was talking about earlier come into sort of make up for any shortcomings your character has. But of course, it's a limited resource. So it's
Yep.
But so Woodlander's a lot more interpretive in that respect, in terms of how you apply your character's skills. So like if you have a background as, say, a farmer, that doesn't necessarily just encompass the act of planting seeds and making them grow. It could help you, say, identify certain plants. So like it could possibly help you, foraging for food or medical supplies, maybe haggling for a good price on, produce that your character might be familiar with. So like, think outside the box, think critically about the situation and how your character might handle it. So
Cool.
it's less plug and chug, as I tend to call games that are like, give me a persuasion check, and then like you just look at your persuasion ability and roll that, and it's not as straightforward as that, but it's meant to be more flexible, right? It gives the players more freedom to sort of get into character, more opportunities to really explore their character's background and concept as a whole. And specifically, I wanted players to think critically about the situations their characters are in, and what sort of knowledge and tools they have at their experience to sort of give the same sort of puzzle solving or riddle solving brain waves that characters in Redwall often get, because there's a big focus on solving puzzles. Those are less, you can't really codify those sorts of things in a game unless you design specific mini games, right? So I wanted to encourage, critical thinking and problem solving in that regard. So
You hear that, Pete? There's no Itagals.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, hey, Pete, that means there's no Itagals.
No. Yeah, but familiarizing yourself with your character on a deeper level was my goal with that design. So
cool.
I guess my thought is, I think you said you plan like you'd want to play like a mole fighter sort of character. What would everyone else want to be playing as if you were to participate in a Woodlander campaign?
Oh, I was always a classic Badger Lord person.
Nice. I'd go for a mouse. I want to be sneaky, stabby, stealthy.
Definitely an option. Definitely a good strategy for someone as small and relatively weak as a mouse, comparatively speaking.
Stealth Archer.
Yeah.
Oh, Skyrim Stealth Archer.
Yep, Skyrim Stealth Archer. Just min-max.
Get some poisoned arrows or something, and get them in the weak spots and take them out that way. Definitely a good strategy.
I'm also IRL something of a card magician / magic enthusiast. So I'm wondering about integrating that kind of showmanship into my character's like front-facing persona.
Yeah, I mean that's very role playing. Like that, I think that would depend more on like how you role play the character. But yeah, you could definitely have a background like skills as like a magician or stage magician or
performer,
even something like a con man, doing the sleight of hand kind of stuff. You could definitely get some like dice or decks of cards or something you could use to perform some magic tricks. There's there is a dedicated a kit of magic tricks that you could give your character to put on shows and stuff. I mean,
Nice.
a lot of games, a lot of fantasy games usually focus a lot on, fighting and combat, which, that's easy to understand. That's very exciting. And, combat is a big part of the genre that Woodlander is meant to accommodate. Redwall has a lot of battles. There's plenty of combat in the Mistmantle Chronicles, and like even something like Disney's Robin Hood or Mouse Guard, right? Because when you think medieval, you usually think of swords and knights and stuff anyway. But you could easily have a campaign that's not combat focused. Although, from my experience, eventually someone's going to try to punch somebody in the face for one reason or another, and so combat is good to accommodate, good to anticipate, even if it's not the focus of the game. But there's role-playing games that are derived from wargaming. D&D started off as a spin-off of traditional war games, but you could definitely have a campaign in Woodlander where you're just the traveling circus performers or magicians, or even just people just sort of wandering around and just experiencing the world, just sort of traveling the countryside, not looking for trouble, not necessarily trying to be a hero. You're just like the old explorers who are like exploring South America or something, finding old ruins, or exploring Egypt and uncovering tombs and stuff. You could definitely do something like that. It doesn't have to be big battles fighting villains. It could just be trying to make a living, doing your job, or just surviving out in the wild.
We could totally be the Rambling Rosehip players.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly that. Or the their descendants, the
Wandering
Wood Soul Wonder Taders? I don't know. I'm trying to come up with something.
The Wandering Noonvale Companions Troop or something like that. But yeah, you
could turn it into an acronym.
Yeah. So I've got my sort of motto when designing Woodlander was "There's a rule for that," because it's a very comprehensive system. Because my both to accommodate things like and incentivize things like traveling and wilderness survival and navigation, as well as things like combat, things that other games don't necessarily incentivize or focus on as much. And I lost my train of thought. Darn. I lost my train of thought in the middle of my thought. Woodlander is a very comprehensive system, so that there's a good, if you can think of a situation, there's probably a rule in the rule book that at least trying to address the situation, because my players during playtesting would always want to try to do things, which is one reason why I made the system as flexible as it was, just to allow players to a greater freedom in terms of like how they approach challenges and tasks. But yeah, I hope any of you guys, if you're backing the project or acquiring the game after the project is concluded, perhaps, I hope you guys find it entertaining and useful for telling similar stories like Redwall and the other franchises we all enjoy in this subgenre of fantasy, the animal fantasy.
I, for one, am looking forward to getting my hands on my copy.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess that's about it. We've, I think, exhausted every single topic we can think of. I guess all that remains to be said is Woodlander is on Kickstarter, but it's probably completed by this point. You can still find the page and look over everything that's on there, and it will eventually be hopefully out on Drive-Thru RPG. Thank you, Alex, for coming on and talking about your system. I'm very excited to see it.
Yes, thank you. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks. This was
Yeah,
great.
I hope you guys enjoyed playing it. Maybe for those of you who haven't had much experience with role-playing games, hopefully it helps cultivate further interest in the hobby. And you have fun making up your own characters and making up your own stories and adventures to set them out on, as was my goal when making the game. So we got about at the time of recording, we've got less than 10 days until the Kickstarter concludes. So far, it's been very successful, and I hope the success continues. I want to see fellow fans enjoy the game, and hopefully it helps them in the way that it helped me to make my own adventures, make my own stories, and sort of bring new life and a new perspective to the franchise, I'm losing my
Fandom?
the what?
The fandom?
The fandom, yeah. I was struggling for a word there.
Oh, that happens to me all the time. English is my first language, also my worst language.
Yeah, right.
I know what I want to say. It's just I don't always know how to say it.
I English good occasionally, sometimes bad words.
Yeah. So, thank you guys for having me on. I'm always
Thank
happy
you.
to talk about my game, talk about my other work too, my art. If anyone's
Absolutely.
curious about that, always happy to provide more information, more context for the curious-minded.
Sweet.
Awesome. Well, I guess with that, all that's left to say is thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm Matthias.
I'm Braden.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Pat, and I'm Pete.
And thank you, and good night.
Oh, ultra dramatic with that outro there, weren't you?
And I wasn't sure how to
Good
close
luck.
it, so I went with it.
Yeah, well,
Great
I'm keeping
news
my
anchor
last
of you.
sentence there as a outro outtake. Like,
Totally.